this subject matter that I have to discuss today has become center of controversy in recent times, because you have heard that various eminent personalities have been heard saying that Ganesha's head was planted because at that time, in this very ancient period, surgery has developed to such an extent. We heard that Karna's birth was because of the development of medical science like that. We heard that some 7,000 years back, our ancient sages used to fly in aircraft that went not only to different places, but different planets. We have heard all that. And that has naturally raised a question. What has happened is that there are some people who believe that, and there are some people who have the opinion that practically nothing happened in India, and science developed when the Western science came. What I am trying to show is that both these notions are false. India did have very rich scientific heritage, but we need to understand what exactly happened. And in giving this talk, I will make a request to the whole audience. The request is this: never allow a speaker to say anything without proof, including proof. So, whenever I say something, it is within your rights to demand, and it is my job to say only the things which can be proved. So I will say only that. In discussing the history of science in India, what I will do is I will divide the whole period of ancient India into a few epochs. Normally we do that in studying history. Certain period is called medieval period, certain period is called ancient period, modern period. So there is a reason for that. Without that, we cannot really organize our thoughts. So, can I go to the next page? The time periods in which I will break it are Indus Valley Civilization, the Vedic age, the post-Vedic period, the medieval age, and the modern age. And the time periods are more or less specified here. The moment I do that, you might ask me, what is the proof of these times? Well, whenever historians want to find out times, they depend on two types of things. One is called monuments, second is called documents. Monuments are the things that are found and which, with radiometric dating, can be dated. And two, documents. If the documents talk about the reign of a particular king, they will know that that document's period and the king's period are the same, similar. So there are very identifiable methods by which scientists or historians identify these ages. So for example, the Indus Valley Civilization, you do have those relics from which you can date. Unfortunately, in the Vedic period, we have nothing. Not a single monument. Monument also includes houses, remains of the houses, remains of the things that we use. If they fought, there could be some bows and arrows, something found. Nothing is there. But we have documents. So there, our basis is document. And similarly, so let us start with the Indus Valley Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization essentially is concentrated in the northwest side of India and Pakistan. We hear of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, but actually there are more than 500 such small sites, 150 important sites, and it covers around this much. And each most important thing, and each is a urban civilization. Urban. It is not village-based civilization, it is urban. And in that, since we are discussing not the time itself, not history, but science in that. So I will point specifically to that. These are some of the things that are found. For example, this is a mound, and close to that, at some elevation, we have the granary. And here in the front, we have a public path, and you have various structures. And if you go further, you can see this structure of the public path. You also do see this kind of drains, and that time. And from the houses, there are drains connected to the public drains, and those drains going all the way to the rivers. You have these wells, and we also have a very square rectangular pattern of the houses. These are bricks. These are all bricks. Bricks, concave bricks, that's important. Of a specific size, 1:4, and that's true for all the Harappan civilization. Then one important aspect is that there is a regularity of the plan and construction that can only happen if there is something to the government. That cannot happen if everybody plays on their own. And there is another important issue: there is no monumental art, no big house, which means that it was not a reign of a very big powerful king. Now let us try to figure out what kind of science is needed in order to make this. Firstly, suppose you are given the task of going to a field, barren field, and drawing a rectangle. You immediately realize that requires some idea of geometry, especially how to draw a rectangle, draw a right angle, how to draw equal sides. All that would be needed, so that much of geometry must have developed at the time. And we see a system of weights and measures. There was a scale, and then weights also. That means they had weight balance. And in their terracotta seals, you find various types of designs. It is clear that in order to make designs like these, you need to have very clear about idea what something you get. You cannot make these designs without some idea about it. So that much of geometry must have. Why I am having to say must have? Because their script were not able to read. They had a script, but they are not able to read. This civilization went through a period of decline and finally resurgence. And we have not been able to figure out exactly why. The scientists have not been able to figure out exactly why. But the point is that such ancient civilizations in various places have also seen such decline and disappearance. For example, in South America, there were 3 civilizations in the world: Aztec, Maya, and Inca. When Christopher Columbus went, which civilization did he encounter? It was Aztec. What happened to Maya and Inca? It is it. So the relics are there, which means that there was a civilization that existed for 600, 500 years, and then simply disappeared. The reason most scientists find is that in order for such city-based urban civilization to develop, since there is concentration of human population, there has to be supporting area of agriculture that feeds that concentrated human existence. If somehow the agriculture declines due to whatever reasons, then that becomes unviable. That is one possibility. The other is that diseases. If you have concentration of people, any infectious disease can spread very fast, and that can also eradicate a civilization. Any of these may have happened, but we don't know what exactly. But we do know that after around this time, it declined. How do you know this time? From those records, radiometric dating, nothing is found dating after this. So, with that, let us go to the Vedic age. As I said, the Vedic age we have various records, mainly of the nature of documents. The currently established idea is that a specific language group migrated from Asia Minor to various places, and one of those tribes, or many of these tribes, entered around this time. What proofs are there? I'll come to that later. And these were horse-riding, pastoral, migratory tribes, and they did not know agriculture, but their main livelihood was animal husbandry, and they did not have a religion. And because of that, you know, that Shruti and Smriti, that is how they had to propagate their literature. This is the picture of the migratory groups, and out of that one appears to come here, but all these places are populated by the people who at one time migrated from here. The main literature that we have from that period are Vedanta, Puranas, Upanishads, Brahmanas, Samhitas. Now, these are intellectual creations of the high of that time. And that is what is presented to us as a evidence of the people of that. And naturally, when we talk about the scientific developments, we have to count on these literature. One, mathematics. Numbers, we know that they used to write numbers in a 10-base system, it will be right now. But it was not the kind of numbers that we use. Why? Because we use zero. There was no zero. We use a place value system. There was no place value system. Yet it was a 10-base system, which means, you understand what it means? It means that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 different symbols for the 9 digits. When you go to 10, you need a new symbol. That 10, by that sign you place 1, it makes 11. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, and 20 you need a new symbol. Which means that for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 you need new symbols. 100, 200, 300, 400 you need new symbols. 1000, 2000, all these you need new symbols. Yet, you will find, to a surprise, people have found that they could figure out very, very large numbers. Even though that means they had to memorize very, very large number of symbols. Zero had not been discovered, and they needed. Still, they could figure out numbers as big as a trillion. They could figure out what are odd numbers, multiples of 4, fractions, small fractions, 2 by 3, 1 by 4. Those things are mentioned in various literature. And I will come to the geometry a little more detail, because that is where the main development was. It happened around this time and found in what are known as the studio. So there are 7 Shubha texts. Out of this, Bodhana Shubha is the oldest, and also it seems the most extensive. So I will mainly concentrate on the things that are found in Bodhana Shubha. What is Shubha? You see, these are the ways to make the altars, Vedi. And in order to make the Vedi, they used to make it with a rope. Shubha means a rope. So how to make the Vedi with a rope? And since the Vedic construction demanded certain geometry, they had to tackle with the problem of doing that geometry with just a rope. And that is remarkable. For example, if I ask you to tell me what is the north-south direction here, will you be able to tell me? Without the aid of a compass? Not very easy. Okay. They figured out that. Their construction was like this. At one place, you make a circle by taking the rope around, put a pole here, and observe the shadow of the pole when the sun rises, say this. Observe the shadow of the pole when the sun sets, say this. Mark where it intersects, and then draw a line between these three space lines. This is this space line. You can do that, you will find it easy. For example, how to draw a perpendicular bisect with a thread. Take a thread and mark the middle point of the thread. You can easily do that. Take 2 points smaller than the thread's length. Okay. Now stretch the thread in this direction. Place it. And wherever this midpoint goes, place it in this direction, wherever the midpoint goes, join them that will be a perpendicular bisect. So, nice methods of really doing it. And remarkably, even a statement of the Pythagoras theorem appears in this rule. It says in English, a rope stretched along the length of the diagonal produces an area which the vertical and horizontal sides make together. It doesn't talk about squares, but it means squares because their calculations. Which means that at least the statement of the Pythagoras theorem existed at that time. This question was asked to Professor Banerjee. He says that who invented Pythagoras theorem? The answer to that question has to be obtained depending on what you are actually trying to find out. The first to have some idea about it must be Egypt, because you cannot really make those pyramids without any idea of the Pythagoras theorem. Impossible. The first to create the Pythagoras triplets, these are the triplets. 3 square plus 4 square equals 5 square, 5 square plus 2 square equals 30 square. These triplets were maintained in the support. So there's also another statement of Pythagoras theorem. And to first to formulate a geometrical statement is in 800 BC, older than 200 BC. And the first to give a proof was a chance. None of these are Pythagoras. So Pythagoras really learned it and wrote it, and we don't have any writing of Pythagoras. We learned that this is Pythagoras theorem from whom? Euclid. Euclid's writing said that this is Pythagoras theorem, so we call it Pythagoras. But actually it was much more. For example, there are certain approximations we find. For example, this approximation is not really accurate but approximate. They didn't know decimal numbers, so they had to do things like that. And for example, from this you can infer root 2 would be from this one, something like this, from this one, something like that. It's not very bad. Right? And we have another single sentence that says this. This was not written like this, by the way. This was in a shloka. This was in a full sentence. But if you write it out, root 2 becomes this. And it's really wonderful how they form this number, 3 into 4 into 32. I don't know. But ultimately it gives this, which is not very bad. It is 2 up to 5th decimal place. It's not very bad at all. Why does it need to do it? Because root is very important. 1 square plus 1 square is root 2. So the diagonal of a square of side 1 is root 2. They needed it. For example, we find some theorems. They didn't state as theorems, but diagonals of rectangle bisecting each other, diagonals of rhombus bisected right angles, area of a square formed by joining the midpoints of the square is half the original, so on and so forth. This circling a square is a very important problem you will find in all the solutions. Why? As I told you, these are meant for making orders, and orders are for puja. And puja is to gods, right? Now there are various gods. Some gods were bigger gods, some gods were smaller gods, and some gods were of equal position, right? If you have some gods of equal position, then you have to make the orders of the same size. Now for somebody, you have to make order of square, somebody you have to make circle, somebody you have to make a rectangle. So you have a geometrical problem of constructing a square of the same size, same area as a rectangle, a square and same size as a circle, or a circle of the same size as a rectangle. How to do that? Not an easy problem. Most of you are students of an IIT. If I give you the problem, can you solve it in 10 minutes? It's not easy. So, the way they did it is like circling a square. Start with a square ABCD. This is the midpoint O. Join OA, right? Now draw a circle centered at O and the radius OA. So you got this big one, red one. It intersects this line at point M and the original square at point N. Now divide this MN into 2/3 to 1/3. Okay? Then you get the point P and draw a circle there. That is, according to them, the circle of the same area as a square. Is it true? Well, you can yourself do it, and you will find this area of a circle is given by pi r square. So there is pi. So you can extract the number pi from their calculation. You will find pi comes to be 3.08 approximately. We know that 3.1216 is the value of pi. So they got it something like 0.308. So this construction is approximate, but not very bad for that time. As I told you, initially during the Vedic period there was no agriculture, but later, around 1000 BC, agriculture started. And when agriculture starts in any civilization, they had to formulate a calendar. And in order to formulate a calendar, you have to look at the sky, because that is what offers you some periodic events. They did that, and with that, they did observe the motions of the sun, the moon, the planets, and that is what you find mainly in Vedanga Jyotisha, for example. Do not believe that Vedanga Jyotisha is Jyotisha. No, it's not. It is an astronomical. There is nothing like astrology in Vedanga Jyotisha. There was no astrology in Vedic period. Period. There is nothing. Nothing. It came much later. It came into India much later, after Alexander's age. So it is not Indian. They were conversant with the periodic nature of the moon, Amosha, Purnima, the seasons. They identify 6 ritus, and they could also identify what is known as the winter solstice and the summer solstice. Naturally, they had idea about the Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. So Uttarayana and Dakshinayana were identified, clearly identified in their calendars, summer and winter solstices, and they named 27 stars, the same name which we used in India. 27 stars along the path of the sun. So if you want to mention where the sun is or the moon is, you have to say that the sun is in this nakshatra. So that is how they needed it, and they named 27 stars. In medical science, we find that there was a significant amount of development. Even though some of those things may not stand the test today, but for that time it was ahead of the other civilizations around the world. And what Ayurveda achieved was that it is basically a collection of empirical knowledge. People tried out various things, and with that certain empirical knowledge developed. What Ayurveda did was, Ayurveda tried to systematize that knowledge. That means there were all these small knowledges everywhere, and Ayurveda tried to systematize. There is a chapter on the medicines for children. There is a chapter on medicine for women. There is a chapter on medicine for old age, so on and so forth. For cuts, bruises, there are chapters. So this kind of organization of the medical knowledge was something that was achieved in Ayurveda. One must appreciate the fact that in any civilization, anywhere in the world, there was always a phase called the magic phase. What is the character of the magic phase? You will find it is a very important aspect that anybody studying anthropology should learn. What is it? See, in very early part of the human civilization, when people was at the mercy of nature, their life depended on nature. Whether or not they will be able to produce anything depends on whether or not there is rain, whether or not they will be able to survive depends on how many fishes are there, sun is there. So their life depends on things in nature. Some are good, they wanted that, some are bad, they didn't want that. And in every civilization you will find that these are seen as in a human image. These are seen in human image, and the way you try to get something out of somebody by pleasing him or her. Similarly, people try various things to please these things. These are human images. So you will find that is a character of the Vedic literature, that all that is there is essentially trying to please with something, some offerings, and give with this. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, all these give and to please. This is in anthropology, this phase of human civilization is called the man, where we are trying to do various things in order to please is what? Natural. This is important. It is natural. And the Vedic hymns are essentially that, attempts to please natural. This is important. And that is why we find that there is a healthy curiosity about natural. All these things develop because of this healthy curiosity about the natural. But towards the end of the Vedic period, we find that these rituals became all important stuff. What to do and what not to do and stuff like that. That sort of stifled human curiosity. And that is why from the around 6th century BC, people started looking for various other alternatives. And that's when Jainism and Buddhism developed. There is one common misconception, that is the spiritualism is a characteristic feature of the Vedic times, which is not true. There were very important philosophical currents which are not Vedic. For example, Lokayata, Nyaya, Vaishika, Sanskrit, these things are not the Vedic tradition. These are somewhat outside the Vedic tradition, especially the Lokayata was definitely a Vedic tradition. And these were very materialistic philosophies. In fact, Lokayata did not believe in the existence of an Atma, a soul. Refused to accept anything on the basis of belief. Theorized that everything in the world is made of 4 constituents, the Buddha, and things like that. All these things, you may not even call that as modern science, but these are all materials. Right? So they thought that everything is made of material. Nowadays we find various claims being made regarding the Vedic period. So let us examine them. Now people are claiming, there are some people claiming that there was no Aryan migration into India. They are claiming that Aryans were indigenous people of India. There are also claims that the Vedic culture was, I am putting a very conservative estimate, because in the last Indian Science Congress, when somebody said that people used to fly in aircraft 7,000 years back, obviously they started more than 10,000. So people say, somebody says 50,000, people say 1 lakh, because these are doctors. And they will be covered. All the science and technology that modern era has seen were known to the Vedic sages, and the Indian village civilization was a part of Vedic. These are the claims that have been made. So let us examine the correctness on the basis of evidence. Nothing else is here. When did humans become humans? When did the human race start? Well, anatomically accurate humans evolved around 1 lakh years back, and culturally evolved. Culturally evolved means somebody who can speak and proves. That evolved something like 30 to 40,000 years. Right? So you cannot have any civilization before 30,000 years. Good. Not only that, in the early part after humans became humans, it was Paleolithic period. Paleolithic is old stone age, when people didn't even know agriculture. That was the hunter-gatherer phase. Hunter-gatherer phase, obviously we are not talking about hunter-gatherer phase, right? Agriculture developed all over the world around 10,000 years back. Okay, so we are not talking about a time more than 10,000 years back. So let us talk sense, right? Let's talk sense. Let's not talk in terms of belief. So this is, no, we have to pinpoint sometimes when we can. Let's see. Let's take each claim one by one. The Indus Valley civilization was a part of the Vedic era. This is true. There are a few evidences on the basis of which scientists say that No, this is not. Firstly, the structure of the Indus Valley civilization was made of bricks. You have seen that already. Not a single brick has been found dating from the Vedic age. Not a single brick. Not a single brick all over India. Because the Vedic Aryans lived in houses that are perished. Wood, bamboo rings. The first brick has been found in a temple in Gidar, now in UP, near Kharagpur. Yeah, this is the temple. Some people may ask, what was the building material during Ashoka's time? For example, the Sankey Stupa, there is not a single brick. This is made of wood and stone. Complete made of stone and wood, timber. So even in Ashoka's time, there was no brick. Second important evidence, there is no horse in the Indus Valley. All the seals that were found, none of these are horses. Different animals, right? None of these are horses. But all over the Vedic literature, you will find horses. All over. The Ashwamedh, Yajna, and then all that. There are, in Rig Veda itself, there are more than 560 mentions the horse. Obviously, there was horse in the Vedic period. There was no horse in the Indus Valley. The Indus Valley people had a written script. It's like this. They have not been able to read it outright, but the linguists have at least been able to say that this was written from the right to left. Okay, that one can say based on certain witnesses. But there was no written script in the Vedic age, at least the early Vedic. Late Vedic age there was. That's why you convey Shruti and Smriti. There is no description of city life, urban life, or brick-built houses, grid pattern of streets, drainage system in any of the Vedic literature. So if those people encountered the Vedic, the Indus Valley civilization, obviously there will be some mention of this. There is none, not a single. And then the pantheon between the gods and goddesses also are different, as evidence from their images that were found. Some people believe that Shiva was a non-Aryan god. It is non-Aryan god, alright, but not from the Indus Valley. There were non-Aryans around in India with whom the Aryan people interacted, but there is no evidence of Shiva or any image of Shiva in the Indus Valley. There is another claim. So, with all these 5 claims, it can be said that there was no cultural exchange between the people of the Indus Valley civilization and the people of the Vedic age. Had there been, at least these things would not be there. At least had there been, the Vedic people would make big houses. Had there been, the Vedic people would mention that they have seen houses made of bricks. The Vedic people would have some kind of written script. There was definitely no cultural exchange between the civilization. There is a claim that Vedic Aryans were indigenous people of India. They didn't come from outside. Main important evidence is the horse. The horse is the prime animal in all Vedic literature. Yet, horse is not found in any of the Indian forests. Horse is not an Indian animal. Right? Have you seen a horse going around in the Indian forest? No. It is not an Indian animal. So, before a certain time, we don't find any horse fossil. After a certain time, we started finding horse fossil. It's not that some horse, while going around eating grass, they came to India. No, it's not like that. Horse came because people came on horseback. So, there must be a certain time in which those people came. And the horse has been present in South Asia from around the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, most likely 1500s. The earliest uncontroversial evidence of horse is around 600. Evidence 2 comes from linguistics. The languages spoken in Europe and in India have a common root. And these languages are classified under one group called the Indo-European family of languages. Now this needs a bit of elaboration. There are various words to find in common between our language and the European language. For example, brother in English, Greek frater, Latin frater, Sanskrit father, Peter, that's why you say paternal uncle, Peter, and Peter. So on and so forth. You find that a large number of words are in common. Even Atma came from breathing, right? Breathe. And in German, Atmen is to breathe. So there are various similarities. And in grammar, there is a major similarity. Case, karak, we have in Indian languages. That is there in many of the European languages. Gender, masculine, feminine, neuter gender, we have in Indian languages as well as most of the European languages. The verbs changing depending on the gender. मैं खाऊंगा, मैं खाऊंगी. So depending on the gender, the verb changes. आप जाएंगे, आप जाएंगी. Changes. The same thing happens in say German. German language also has the exactly same thing. Even in Indian language, we have to address somebody up to. And the verb changes depending on that. आप जाएंगे, तुम जाओगे, जाएंगे. And in German also it's the same thing. Sie, du. Sie gehen, du gehst. The verb changes. So the number in Sanskrit you find that the singular, dual, plural. Dual. There's another specific thing. In most of the languages you have singular and plural. But this has survived in some of the languages in Europe. So that is why people say that these have a common root. And linguists have even worked out the lineage of the languages. The lineage of the languages is very important. There is another issue. Language also allows us to date. Every year, Oxford Dictionary employs some 100 people to find out what new words have been added to the English language. And every year, the dictionary comes anew. Why? Because the language is changing. If you find any literature that talks in terms of debate, comment, we will say it is recent. We will say at least 100 years old, right? By the way of language used, one can figure out the time. And this is how people, linguists, specialists in language, can figure out the timings of writing various literature. Anyway, so the linguists have now figured out that the original language family branched out into two language families. One is the central languages, another is the second languages. The central languages created all the European family, the one that went to the west. And you can see the modern languages at the last part. These are all intermediate languages, most of whom are extinct now. Like the biological world, that evolves, and finally you have at the end the thing that survives today. The middle ones are extinct. And the Proto-Indo-European, sometimes it's called the Proto-Indo-Iranian branch of languages. And here at the end you find the current branches. And all these are started from one common seed, and that is called the original Indian language. That is why most historians believe that a few waves of migration of Aryan-speaking people occurred in the period between 2000 and 1500, but there is no evidence of warfare in the industrial cities. There is no plundering, burning, there is no evidence of that. So people believe that there was no direct invasion into the cities. Some people earlier believed that the industrial civilization disappeared because of the Aryan invasion or not. No. Another important thing is that Aryan is not a race. Aryan is not a race, it is just a language too. It has never been categorized as a race. Calling it a race was the creation of the German fascists. Before the German fascists, nobody called it a race. But now after the German fascists, many people have started calling it a race. It's not right. It is just a language. So let us now come to, if I have been able to convince you that the Aryans were really people who migrated at some point of time from outside. They brought with them their language, but settled here and created extremely rich culture, extremely rich literature, from which we can still learn a lot about our history. Now let's come to the post-Vedic and Siddhartha. Almost all the things that really are startling come from this period. When does this period start? You can say around 6th century BC. 6th century BC is the time when Jainism started. 5th century BC is the time when Buddhism started, and after that it was mainly the Buddhist period. So it is not really for the Vedic period. Though the language of that time was still Sanskrit. So anything written in Sanskrit should not be treated as Vedic literature. No, it's not. Even 200 years back, in India, most of the literature that we had were in Sanskrit. 200 years back. They were not Vedic. In medical science, we find great names: Sushruta, Atreya, Jivaka, Charaka. Jivaka was a court, of Bindishan. These are also people. But nevertheless, we know that they developed surgery to some extent. And what subject they developed, that is also there, because these books, Charak Samhita and Sushruta Samhita, have come. We have found them, so we know exactly what they are. We found that they had discussed all these surgical instruments. It is real that development was there. And there is a reason why in Charak Samhita as well as Sushruta Samhita, Charak's time period is not very clear. The Sushruta Samhita's advantage is that he mentioned the king of that time. Since we know who ruled at that time, we can pinpoint it. It was at 6th century BC. So at that time, these developments were there. What interests Vedic Sanskrit to consider? Vedic Sanskrit was not standardized. That's why it's somewhat difficult to read the Vedic Sanskrit, because standardization means well set rules of grammar with which anybody can learn and understand something. That was not in Vedic Sanskrit. Panini achieved that. That is why he is called the greatest grammarian of antiquity. And not only that, there is one thing I don't know whether you have noticed, that our alphabets have a very peculiar structure. For example, see this alphabetic structure. Here the consonants are arranged depending on how we pronounce it. Right? This is how much air goes through your mouth, and this is where the tongue touches it. So depending on when it's been formed, is extremely scientific, and it's not there in any of the other languages anywhere in the world. It is Indian contribution of Pali. In astronomy, for example, Siddhartha Jyotisha was after the Vedic period, into the Siddharthic period, and a collection of quite a large number of books. But you will notice that among these books, you suddenly find Roman Siddhanta, Polish Siddhanta, German Siddhanta. You see that these are, what is it? Roman, Polish. German means basically the Greeks were called Germans. So from there, astronomical ideas, many astrological ideas entered India. After that, we find astrology in India because that was not. But important thing is that at that time they did observe the sky somewhat intently, and they noticed the sidereal year. They noticed this time period part. But important thing is that they didn't have the point. They didn't have decimal. So how to express it? You notice the problem they faced. That how long is the day? The year is this many days. Even if you can figure that out, how do you figure that out? The sun rises at different places on different days, right? After a certain period, it again rises at the same place. That is the year. But they notice that it's not exactly the same place. There is an offset. And that offset they counted. And so, after how many of these revolutions will that again come to the exactly same place? You will see the problem. And that was an extremely large number of years. and they pinpointed that this is the number of years. This is called a Mahayug. What is a Mahayug? Essentially the number of years that goes before it becomes periodic. And it apparently is not a periodic function. After how long does it become periodic? That was the question they asked. Now let us come to some of the great people of that period. As I said, there are some very, very important personalities. Aryabhata is one. Since we have this book Aryabhatiya, so we know exactly what he said. And there are certain misconceptions of that, let me clarify that. He was the first who first hypothesized that the earth is rotating. Now this is not the same as the modern theory of solar system. What he says is that he sees the sun going from one side to the other, the moon going from one side to the other, or the stars going from one side to the other. All these are not moving. It is that we are moving, the earth is moving. That was revolutionary for that period. That was revolutionary for that period. So much so that apart from him himself, nobody believed it. Great astronomers of his time, Brahmagupta, Brahmagupta, criticized him for that, left and right. So they didn't accept. But he wrote that. That's important. Yes, but he did not read the Copernican model. Sun-centric model. He did not read. That's important. He did not read. And his explanation of the motion of the planets was similar to that of Ptolemy. Okay. We have in mathematics a great leap forward with Jain mathematician who did some work in mathematics in this period. Their main contribution was, see, before that, in the Vedic period, mathematics was subservient to worship. Why did the people who wrote the Sutras do this mathematics? Because they wanted to be Vedics. So, it was not mathematics independent of something. But Jain people, the Jain mathematicians, they first tried to do mathematics independent of all these motives. And they were the first who conceived infinity. Very large numbers first, and then also they conceived infinity. Not only that, they also talked about various types of infinity. Various types of infinity. For example, we know that the number of points on a line is less than the number of points on a square. Okay, so both are infinity, but one is bigger infinity and smaller infinity. And in this time there are very important texts we have found and important mathematicians. Pingala was a very important mathematician of that period, in whom we find the Pascal triangle, the binomial coefficient, the Fibonacci numbers. We find that in Pingala. Pingala was around this time, 280. By the way, Aryabhata was later. The zero and the place level system was discovered in this period. When it was discovered, we don't know. But we see its use mainly from the 5th century AD, not BC. In Aryabhata, we find its use. So the discovery that the absence of something is also a number, it's massive development, massive, unimaginable development. If this development was not, this concept was not there, nothing would be there in that. And this Indian one. Use of zero in writing numbers, for example 20, 30, 40. You don't need to write new numbers. You need to write new symbols for this. This comes immediately with this. The place value system of writing the bigger numbers, like this place value system. 39025 is 3 to 10 to 12, 3 plus 9 to 10 to 12. All this was a development of this kind. And because of that, even the later scientists acknowledge that. Einstein, for example, wrote, we owe a lot to Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery would have been made. An important evidence of that period, since I say that, what I am saying, there has to be a basis of that. The Bakhshali monastery, it was discovered in Pakistan, a very remote place. That has been dated at around 480, but there is a controversy about that. This is a compendium of various rules and illustrative examples and their solutions. So in it, what we find that these are only don't pages, so we cannot read the whole thing, we can get the whole thing. But it is clear that the author is posing mathematical problems and offering solutions. And solutions also contain algebra. That's important. So let us look at the time scale of the Indian mathematicians. The Supersutra was 800 to 200 BC, Pingala was 200 BC, Great mathematician was in this time. Pakshali manuscript was 4th century AD, and after that we have the great development. Aryabhata, 5th century, Banerjee, 6th century, Brahmagupta, 7th century, Mahavira, 9th century, and Bhattacharya, 12th century. After that, we do not see any big development in the main part of India. Only in one corner, in Kerala, we find some development. So these are known as the Kerala mathematicians. And then again, we have a regeneration in 9th century. Aryabhata, for example, in mathematics, he can find the 4 decimal places up to 3.1416. He formulated the first trigonometric table, and there was this is something that needs research. For example, if you have an equation like this, 2 unknowns, so it's indeterminate, right? 2 unknowns. Yet they found solutions of this, with the assumption that the solutions are whole numbers. Okay, this is a very, very important problem in number theory. What whole numbers can satisfy equations like this? And we find solutions of this. In Aryabhata, solutions of Diamond equation of this form. And well, this is a peculiar formula we find, this correct in Aryabhata. And in Brahmagupta we find cyclic quadrilateral equation like this. And this is a second order Diamond equation. And they form whole number solutions. And not only that, Brahmagupta even formulated a method of finding newer and newer solutions to this. So this is a outstanding one. The square root of negative number doesn't exist. Mahavira was first to say that, much before the intelligence. And combinations of n, what we say now NCR, that was found in Bhattacharya was the last of the great mathematicians, and his contributions are really outstanding. He wrote on arithmetic, algebra, permutations, combinations, progression, geometry, mensuration, but puzzles is something that he gave Lilavati. Lilavati was his daughter. So he taught his daughter by giving puzzles and solving her to asking her to solve. And finally, the book gives the solutions. And the solutions are extremely interesting for anybody to learn how they thought. It's extremely interesting. Most of these are algebraic. So it's clear that algebra developed here. It's to be understood clearly. Greece mainly developed geometry. There was practically no algebra or arithmetic in Greece. You know why? Because they did not develop the number system. And the whole thing depends on the number system. You cannot have arithmetic, good arithmetic. Try to simply multiply 300 to 60. I got 92 in Roman. Right? Immediately you will find it cannot be done. So if you cannot do that kind of arithmetic, you cannot have development in arithmetic or algebra. So that is why in Greece you will find great developments in geometry but not arithmetic. Arithmetic and algebra developed mainly in India. Okay? But not great geometry, I must admit that. Not comparable to the way the depicts develop geometry, but the method of axioms and proofs and theorems that we do not develop. But algebra definitely started in India, and when Brahmagupta's work was translated into Arabic, it was translated to Arabic, and then it went to Arab. Arabs adopted it, and we have great Arabian mathematicians who adopted algebra, developed it further. It's not that they only carried it, they developed it further. So the reason that we call it algebra, because it carries the name of algebra. He was a Arabian mathematician, but he acknowledges that it was from Brahmagupta activity. Then he also, this Bhaskaracharyya also did a lot of work on astronomy, especially naked eye astronomy. As far as naked eye astronomy can go, he was not really an astronomer, but he essentially talked about how to observe, so that if one do one observer, do this. So the text was like and there is a book by Bhaskara, Siddhanta Ceremony, one of the best and exhaustive texts on Indian astronomy. And he discovered the moon's erection. There is a chapter on spherical astronomy. What you see is a sphere, celestial sphere. A different kind of geometry applies there. And Bhaskara developed that spherical astronomy. Okay, so different coordinate system, it should be XY system. There is a book called Goladhyaya, actually talks about that spherical astronomy. And we have the astronomical instruments, and we have the input formulae and methods of. If you ever go to the Jantar Mantar not in Delhi, but in Jaipur, you will find some of these. But you must know that Jaipur Jantar Mantar was developed in the 16th century after Galileo. After Galileo means then already Europeans have started seeing things with telescopes. And then the Maharaja Jai Singh made it as much as naked eye astronomy. And it was this method that. So this method not directly, because Bhaskara's work was translated to Arabic and again translated back to Sanskrit, and only then there is a given. He introduced the concept of instantaneous motion, the Tathkalika Goti of the planet. Planet's motion, the average motion, and instantaneous motion, that different. Not only that, he talks about in terms of Sthula Gati and Sukshma Gati. And the trigonometric tables, for example, I did not discuss that. In Brahmagupta, we find the start of trigonometry in Aryabhata also. They used to call sines and cosine as j and coj. So they had a different name. For example, the algebra they did, we do it with x, y, z, a, b, c. What they do? They use whatever. Okay, they use to represent one x. But in the x, y, z, they use the first letter of a color letter. Blue, green, yellow. Then you say blue, B. Take off. So in Sanskrit, that is how they used to do the algebra. But you find various formulae. Basically, the formulae that you have in school, they are all there in the writings of Brahmagupta and Baramira and Bhaskara. All of them. Sin square plus cos square equal to 1 there. So all this they will learn. The solution of the independent diaphantic equations, Bhaskara gave a general method called Chakravala, and people have said that this is one of the best contributions we have. And he illustrated that for n is equal to 61, n is equal to 67, for example, an equation like this, and he gave the solution of this. You see how difficult it is. Using an algorithmic procedure, he beat it. Verma says that later European mathematicians followed the same thing and developed it further. This equation is actually attributed to John Bell, a British mathematician, but it is actually something that Bhaskara worked on some 500 years before John Bell. Actually, people have mathematicians said that it should not be called Bell's equation, it should be called Brahmagupta equation. The comments by important mathematicians, for example, Bhaskara's Chakravala method is beyond all praise. It is certainly the finest thing achieved in the theory of numbers before Lagrange. regarding farmer's challenge and the wild remarks. What should have been farmer's astonishment if some missionary, just back from India, had told him that this problem had been successfully tackled there by native mathematicians over 5 centuries back. This is something that is wrong. These are things that we do know, not something that is imaginary. These are real developments. The credit of constructing the cyclic quadrilateral goes to Brahmagupta. The only cyclic quadrilateral that was known to Western countries till 18th century was beside this, and it was referred to as Brahmagupta's quadrilateral. The German mathematician Kummer says Brahmagupta's simple method enables us to construct any number of such quadrilaterals. Cyclic quadrilateral, right angle. So he developed a method by which you can construct any quadrilateral. From Lilavati, this is one of the creates from Lilavati. This is one of the constructions of the cyclic quadrilateral. And then we come to the Kerala mathematicians period who developed the infinite series, power series, and geometry. And we have also an inkling of the development of calculus. Inkling. I cannot say they developed calculus. That's getting too far. But if somebody says that a curve, the rate of change of something becomes 0 when it reaches the peak, there's some idea about calculus. It is like the decline and fall of science in India. You have to understand that after the 10th century there was no decline, and the last scientist we find in India was Bhaskar. Why? So discovered zero, the position weight number system, 5th to 5th century AD, advanced from medicine, surgery, this time, Aryabhatta. See the timings. There was a great development. This period is called as Siddhantic period. Great development. But then after him, nothing. Zero. Why? The person who tried to answer this question was Acharya P.C. Ray, and then after the Renaissance, we again see a large number of people working in science in India. I am talking about this time. What he said is that there are 3 factors contributing to the decline and fall of science in India. A, the introduction of castes in a rigid form. Why I am coming to that? Introduction of the strictures, do's and don'ts of the Shastra. And third is the state and intellectual dominance of the Vedanta philosophy, which he identifies, which taught people to see the material world as an illusion. And because of that, he says, science that. I will not read, please read his writing. Essentially, he says that if you have a situation where a society where the doers and the thinkers interact, that is the fertile place for development of science. But when casteism developed, the doers and thinkers become separate, there was no communication. And when that happens, maybe your dexterity with the hand may develop, but you cannot develop a boil or a funnel. So, her soil was rendered mortally unfit for the birth of Boyle, Descartes or Newton, and her very name was all but once expunged from the map of the world. On Shastra, he says, the drift of Manu. His point is that in order to learn surgery, a student must cut a dead body to understand what is their result. Without that, you cannot learn surgery. And Shashruta said that. But in the Shastras, when touching a cadaver became something that you cannot do, do's and don'ts, then obviously the cultivation of surgery died. Even Israel commented that surgery became only practiced by the barbers. In the medieval India, it stopped being done by any literate people. That the barbers used to cut boys. And for the Vedanta philosophy says, the Vedanta philosophy as modified and expanded by Shankara, which teaches the unreality of the material world, is also to a large extent responsible for bringing the study of physical science into this field. So he says that if you look at the material world as an illusion, then obviously you will not have any question about it. You will not try to probe it. You have to understand, you have to believe that what you are seeing, what you are touching, the things around you are real. Only on that you can ask questions and develop things. So when there was an intellectual dominance of this kind of thing, according to this science. Again we had this Indian Renaissance, started by Raja Rammohn Ray and Ishwarchandra Vidyasagar, and then we see a galaxy of scientists again. So it is because a change of intellectual climate that led to a condition conducive to the development of science. So naturally we need to cultivate that intellectual climate conducive to the development of science. Thank you. I invite questions. If you have questions, please ask.
How many Sanskrit slokas have been cited till now? Let's say there are 4 Vedas, let's for example we go to depicts, right? That where the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samveda, all these have been written on script, right? So how many till now have been converted, got understood? Right? Almost. Like in Rig Veda, they talk also about the physics, basic physics. For example, black body radiation. I heard means I don't know about the slope, what is that, but they also talk about the black body radiation in sloka.
No.
Is it so those who make the interpretation depends on that, or it is the
what you find in the Vedas is essentially the word black, the word body.
It's a Krishnika. It says Krishnika. The what is the Krishnika they say?
There is no black body radiation in the Vedas. Period. I can.
In the Rig Veda they say
There is
some
nothing.
is there.
There is nothing. There is nothing. Let me emphatically say that. What happens is that if somewhere you find the word demand, and we have the demand now, and we immediately extrapolate to say that Vimana was there. Those of you who are Bengalis, we have read Professor Sunku by Sudhir, right? There was a very nice story in which he talks about a scientist who has invented something called annihilator. What is that? Gun. Whenever you do it at somebody, disappears. Extinguished. There is no trace of that. So it's good in literature. Now suppose, imagine a situation where this whole civilization of Bengal is disappeared. No one is there. And 1000 years later, somebody found that. Reading that book, oh, they discovered this. Will you write? No, because it's a disorder. So in the same way, if somebody talks about particle cluster, one should not extrapolate thinking that we have discovered the atom and obviously there was a big because the Pushpa Raj, people see birds, people see earth. People imagine that how nice it would have been if people could fly. So, imagine. The moment you read that, if you immediately start concluding that since we have the aeroplanes and it's similar, what happened is that this kind of writings in depicts is definitely not there. Definitely. I can bet my whole salary on it. No problem. Yet, the what Taranga is there? Taranga is waving. People saw whales in the rivers. People saw whales in the ponds. People saw whales in the sea. So Taranga is there. But why the word Taranga? If you immediately infer that electromagnetic waves discovered by Henry Hertz and Maxwell was discovered. So take it from this. The words are there. But words in what context? In that. In order to talk about black body radiation, what you really need to know? In order to talk about an aeroplane, what you need to know? You need to know aerodynamics, you need to know metallurgy, you need to know thermodynamics, you need to know how to make engines. Where is that literature? Only some human. Is there anything that I am not talking in terms of evidence? Each piece has evidence. Each piece has evidence. So when I talk about something, do not pick out words from big weather and put some modern meaning into it. That's not the right. That's not the right. That's my opinion. There.
I have one question. Here.
Hello.
You have not touched upon something which was perhaps quite well developed at that period of time. It's metallurgy.
Yeah, metallurgy I did not touch. I actually time is limited, so I do not touch. Metallurgy was very well discussed by this book by IIT Kharagpur, History of Hindu Chemistry. How much was the development of metallurgy? The process of making steel, what is known as the wood steel, was actually developed in India. It was learned by the Arabs. Later it went to Europe and they used to call it Damascus steel. But actually it was developed in India. But there's one thing you should know. The pillar of Qutub Minar. Pillar of Qutub Minar is a exponent. It doesn't last. Right? It doesn't last. And people say that the metallurgy at that time was developed so much. The metallurgy is the foundation. The point is that in the process of extraction of iron from iron ore, normally a lot of impurities are there. One of the major impurities is phosphorus. Major impurity is phosphorus. But phosphorus makes the iron brittle. That is why in the modern process of steel making, they put oxygen, they oxidate the phosphorus out so that the iron that comes out does not have phosphorus. That is deliberately done. Now in that steel of Qutub Minar, people will analyze and found that there is a lot of phosphorus. Now the issue is that if there is phosphorus, it doesn't last. Well, it's brittle. But if it is such a big thing, the brittleness doesn't matter. Okay, so it's a huge thing, huge mass of iron. Brittleness doesn't matter. So they allowed the phosphorus to be made. By that, they made something that can last. Yet, actually, the material is not usable for anything other than making that.
What is the main proof for that Aryan invasion?
What is it?
Main proof for Aryan invasion.
I said 5 different groups.
Yeah.
Most important is the force. Second important is the language. These two are considered to be the most important evidences on the basis of which scientists decided that there must have been an influx of people at it.
But two groups, one is Harvard and CCMB Hyderabad. They clearly proved that there is no such kind of evidence through the modern science. Like they analyzed 25 groups and they published that there is no any genetical link between these Aryans and Indians. And these are published in 2 major publications.
That goes with the belief that Aryan is a race. I have been telling you, Aryan is not a race. It is a language. Aryan is not a race. It is a language. So do not try to get a language into these schools by genetic knowledge. Do not do that now. That's one thing. Second thing is that if you read that paper, I read it. They are trying to prove that there has been no invasion. The genetic composition of the Indians have remained the same. Now, do you know that Kushans came in? Do you know that Shaks came in? Do you know that Mongols came in? Here somebody tells that there has been no invasion. Do you believe that? So there are reasons to contradict that. People have contradicted. There was a paper, other people contradict. Yes, there was a paper like that. But other people have contradicted that. Because there have been, definitely, there have been.
Because there is contradiction, how we can control definitely Aryans in.
So I am saying that somebody came who wrote fossils. Somebody came who spoke the Proto-Indo-European language. That's all. They are called Aryans. The people who came of this land. That's all I say. That's all I say.
My opinion is like this is not a established group like alien invasion of because there is contradiction we cannot say definitely.
Did I use the word invasion? No, I said migration. Migration has been happening all through land.
Even migration we had to find some schools.
Yes, because there was no horse. Earlier there was horse later. It's migration. No other way. No other way. That's it.
Sources of rebate now. I have seen them.
Sir,
I have seen them. I went there and I have seen them. So, what about the dating now?
I do not know the dating. I do not know the dating of that particular case. But yes, I mean people have been seeing horses in all these remains after 1600 BC. People have been. I mean it doesn't raise an eyebrow because there are horses beyond a certain time, not before a certain time. Because India doesn't have indigenous. So, there's no horses there in India. It came. If it came at a particular time, it started coming at a particular time. And that people, some people debate whether it's 1500 or 1600, 1800. Okay. It should be sometime like that. But I don't know the exact timing of that.
Soumitro, excellent talk. Just one comment. The kind of proof and documentation that you use to make your case, they are mostly from the late 19th century and early 20th century, which means all the quotations that you gave, all the proofs of Indian scientific achievements were dated. There was not much citations of recent research. Say something that happened in the
cited Aryabhatiya, for example. Brahmagupta's literature.
No, I mean that something that has been found, discovered in the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years about ancient India. So my question is that too risky to, given the climate now, to rely on, or is it too much of a hot button?
Let me put it this way. Some of the recent works are politically loaded. That's why I have said only to the extent that I know that there is proof. The recent work, if somebody says something, somebody else says something else. I'm not a specialist on that field to take sense. So I take only those for which I know there is. If somebody tells me, I can definitely thank you. But the recent works, I'm not a specialist of that. And I know that each of these works that you're talking about have been contradicted. So how can I do that?
Last question.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. So my question was that there is some new evidence on even before the Indus Valley, the Ice Age and the pre-Ice Age ones, Garaburi in Japan and others. So some evidences are coming up there. So maybe that may change a little bit of our understanding of history even before the Indus Valley.
Yes.
So maybe
Indus Valley civilization does not speak to Mumbai. Obviously, there are people there who at some point of time developed that country. And people were there. Of course, the first migration into India happened from the African exodus. That created the Indian population, the Indonesian population, the Australian population to the that remained in India, and that made the stock of Indian Aboriginal population. So that is there. And it is true that the evidence of that population was not there, that was very scanty so far. Now we are finding more and more evidence of that. So our understanding of the pre-Harappan time is enriching every year.
that is saying 7,500 BC Yamani.
Yes, but they were hunter-gatherer, not civilians. Hunter-gatherer. That was it.
Excuse me, sir, I have a question. Actually, in one slide you have shown that the value of pi is 3.08 in something what they had calculated in ancient time, and actually it is 3.14. Which one is absolute correct? And why?
3.416.
Which?
3.416. 3.14.
Why we are taking this as our current means calculation is estimate one? Why not ancient one?
And that is because you can yourself check it. No, you can yourself check it. You don't have to believe anybody. You don't have to believe anybody. Just one check it. How to check it?
Actually, sir, it is written 22/7.
No.
When people calculate that, it will go on infinite number of times.
That you take it as 22/7 when you are in class 8. When you go to class 9, no part that 22/7. You have to say 3.1416. Now, why? The reason is that you must yourself do it. Now you don't have to believe anybody. You can yourself find out what is the rate of pi. There are hundreds of ways of doing that. So you do it. I am not asking you to believe anybody. No, don't do it.
No, actually, it is the continuation. They have calculated the value of particular year is 365.258 earlier times, and actually it is something near about that. But the position of stars and all the at that moment of time, what they have calculated may not be equal to the current time. So there must be some variation will come that day. So why we are not taking everything as universe is expanding, the value of what we are calculating right now may not be equal to after 10,000 years or so.
Value 5?
No, year. It's like year. 1 year is 365, something is there.
Yes. That what they calculated, I was trying to show that it's very accurate, not the opposite. I was not trying to show that they're very inaccurate. I was trying to show that even for that time it was very accurate. How many of you know that the year is not 365 days? No, most do not know probably. At most what you know is 365 plus 1/4 because there is a leap year, right? And after that, how many digits do you know? How many knows? Here? Nobody knows. But actually it has many further digits. And then only you get the correct figure. Now they got correct figure up to 4 digits up to the decimal. It's remarkable. I am saying this is what you should be proud of. This is what you should be proud of. Not 50%.
Sir, I am having a supplementary question on Aryan invasion theory.
Yeah.
Sir, there are some elements which are common to both culture, Vedic culture and Indian civilization, like the image of Pashupati on seals in Indus Valley civilization, and some in Indus Valley civilization they also worship people and those trees and all. And Aryan also worship those trees and some goddess which are common to both Aryans in Vedic periods and Indus Valley civilization.
No. Firstly, there was no worship of trees in the Indus Valley civilization.
But sir, there is an image of Pashupati or Mahayogi.
Let me come to that. So let me come one by one. There was no worship of trees in the Indus Valley civilization. There is no tree image in the Indus Valley civilization. That doesn't mean there was no trees. The only thing is that was not their point of worship. Second, Pashupati seal is a single seal out of about 3,000 different seals found in Harappan civilization. Pashupati seal is a single seal. The story goes like this. In the year 1933, the person who was in charge of the excavation in Manipur, he found some 600 seals there, right? Out of that, he named these seals. He named different. Now he named depending on what? He named depending on whatever is there in the seals. This particular seal had a lot of images of animals around it. So there is a central figure and around that various animals. Okay. Because these are shoes, he was very, Sanskrit literate person. He is a British man, but he was a very Sanskrit literate. Since he saw a lot of Pashus, he called it Pashu. It is not because the name was Pashupati. When the seal was found, there was no name to it. Who gave the name? Humans, right? And humans in 1933. So it is not a Pashupati in the way. Now, what is happening is that because of this name, people are attributing keyword to it. Why? Because Pashupati is another name of God. Story is actually that some British man gave that name because there was a lot of Pashus around it. That's it.
Another is about Upanishads. Sir, Upanishads are basically from Vedic literature or from around the contemporary to Jainism and Buddhism.
No, it was late Vedic. and it goes into the Buddhist teaching. Some of the Upanishads were written later. So it's correct. Some of the Upanishads were written, started in that written in the late
In Vedic period, we don't have any account about Upanishad. Like we.
Yes, there are. And I'm saying that we started in the Vedic period and went into the Upanishad.
Okay, because of shortage of time, we have to finish it here. Anyway, Professor Banerjee will be here. Those who have any queries, please interact with him after this program. I thank Professor Soumitro Banerjee for his excellent lecture. Thank you very much. Please, for 50 minutes. We have more program. Our outgoing secretary of IIT Kharagpur chapter will propose a new committee.
Thank you, sir, for a nice lecture. Here I propose the new committee. So I am proposing the President, Dr. Damodar Maiti of Civil Engineering, Vice President, Dr. Saraswati Maiti, Dr. Vivas Adhikari and Dr. Radhakant Kona, Secretary Mr. Vishnu Mandal, youth student, Assistant Secretary Praveen Mulli, Treasurer Vijay Das, Membership in charge Shishantu Bhargava, Ananda Bagchi. Those who are interested in joining Breakthrough Science Society IIT Kharagpur chapter, please wait inside the hall or outside the hall for some time. And then seminar in charge, Mr. Kunal Manna, group study in charge, because we do have a group study every week on a particular day. The group study in charge is Ms. Sneha. Then web development of our website breakthroughindia.org, Mr. Vishwanath Manna, and astronomy in charge, myself, Tapos. Thank you all.
I'm shooting.